Okay, I should start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start right at the beginning. So, Sevrin, how did your love of theatre begin?
My love of theater. Ooh. I started doing theater in middle school. I was doing like in my middle school and in my high school, the plays were a lot of like musicals.
Hmm.
Which was never like the thing that I was super, super nuts about. But I liked the bits in between the songs.
Hmm.
Um, that was the first time I was in theater. But I mean, I think I'd wanted to perform for a while. Like growing up like when I was a little kid, I always liked to do funny voices, like inspired by characters and stuff like SpongeBob. So I think I started pursuing that. My dad was like, you should try out theater. And I did the middle
Oh,
school and high school plays and it was a blast.
yeah, fantastic. So then, Melissa, how did you get into theatre? How did you get into writing specifically?
Um, I got into theater, I think, when I was really young, when I saw like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang on Broadway. And it was like New Year's Eve, so it was like chaos and craziness in like Times Square. But my parents were like, let's go see a play. Why are they heavily discounted this day? Ooh, let's go. And I was taken away by that magic. And like ever since a young age, I loved that feeling of being in a theater. I loved the feeling of not knowing and the unexpected, but also being in a safe space to experience it with others. And then I pursued that a lot, like in school, just trying to find that love and try it, like in school programs like Sevrin. And eventually, when I went to college, I ended up in devised theater, which I never thought of myself originally when you're a 6 year old, just exposed to a lot of musical theater, which I think, the East Coast of America is very like heavy musical theater. Um, and all of a sudden being exposed more to this avant garde form and like Lecoq training and this ability to tell stories with just like a question or a prompt to be the running off point for 50 minutes, 60 minutes, even 2 hours of a
Hmm.
show, and that vulnerability in the room to create that is something that I always love. So I've always been attracted to creating theater and having the ability and the skills to do so, I think, from my training allowed me then creatively when Severin and I were looking at each other just hanging out one day and said, we're both inspired to do this. We both really want to do shows and create a company. So we're not doing one off, one night performances that are all this work and then disappear. And so, with that trust and that ability, we create a lot of the work together and just jump in the space. And then I help edit that as like
Hmm.
a nice script and structure for us to like then have that ability to have repeatability and also, arc and storytelling versus just going to see a bunch of vignettes tied together, which is great sometimes, but something that we've always wanted to do is see how stories can impact audiences and how we can have this audience, technician, actor relationship in a way that's living and breathing.
Hmm.
I think I went on a little long on your
So
question.
it's not a problem. Obviously, Melissa, you said about sitting down with each other and talking about wanting to pursue it. So how did you meet? How did your two paths cross?
Well, we met doing Living Radio, which is this lovely little 10-minute play program in the Lower East Side. Um, and we met doing that because we were actually assigned to each other's group where it's like a 24-hour thing where you get the prompt on the weekend. And we've all kind of been in those similar situations as like, how much work can you do? Put it up on a Monday, no judgment. And we met in rehearsal and we really connected. And then I pitched the idea that I was doing a devised show at that time called According to This, which was like all inspired by like the documents that end up in your parents' attic that were once on the fridge.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, do you want to do this wacky idea? Do you want to experiment out with me? And then we started working on that together and we just kept vibing. And whether we were hanging out or creating work, I think when two minds work in a room,
Hmm.
you embrace it, you don't run from it, because it just welcomes so many wonderful opportunities, like
Hmm.
being here today on your show, Rhys, and getting to talk about our new show, Time Travel Postman.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm just honored every day to work with him.
So going back to Sevrin then, obviously you coming together, deciding that that's something you want to pursue. Where does the name Devon Loves Me come from?
So it comes from a mutual friend of ours. It's actually a friend I went to college with. I don't remember how he ended up in the project, but he was in that device show that Melissa mentioned, the one according to this about like the like children's drawings on the fridge. So he was in that show, and at the cast party for that show, Melissa and I had been like, we were just like goofing around with some puppets that she has. She has these like Jim Henson style, like Muppet looking puppets.
There's a lot of puppets.
Yeah. So we were like playing with those, and we were just like having the puppets have a little romance and remind each other that Devon loved one of them. So we just kept having them chant like Devon loves you, Devon loves me, Devon loves you. We're doing that right in front of him and his girlfriend and now wife.
Yes.
It was just something really silly that made us laugh. And we kept it up like as like a little recurring joke for a few months. And then like years later we're like, hey, we're trying to form like a partnership and like a company. What's a good name for it? And we couldn't think of anything good or fun. And then I remembered that phrase, and I hit up Melissa about that, and we both thought that was ridiculous. And also, our friend Devin now uses his middle name, Patrick. So we asked him for his blessing too, and he was like, "Hey, the name's not getting used anyway. Might as well use it somewhere."
Hmm. And it's nothing to do with the place in England.
No, we've never actually been. I've got no connection
We
to
gotta
that.
get there because
Yeah.
that does come up often, and we're like, wow, we gotta get our butts over to Devon.
Hmm.
Yeah, I gotta start learning facts for these interviews.
So just jumping back to Melissa then, where did the idea of time travel postman come from?
Ooh. So we did our first Fringe show called Shakespeare Translate, where
Hmm.
we put Shakespeare's plays into Google Translate 15 times and then back into English and performed them very serious Shakespearean actors. Just to kind of like look at the absurdity of language and can stories still exist when language is a barrier
Hmm.
and when that barrier is all of a sudden so completely outlandish. What do you do with it? And so Sevrin looked at me after we did this text heavy show and was like, what if we did a one man silent clown show in complete opposite of it? And like sitting there after that show and knowing how much we went into the script and how crazy it was, I was like, yeah, let's go crazy in the opposite way. Let's really take that limitation of silence in the room coming from such a text heavy play and really force ourselves as an artist to like play with each other and encounter new discoveries
Hmm.
together. So that was like a lovely little step into like starting this show.
Mm.
And then because it's devised theater, we really went in with just the concept of this is a show about the people Severin met on his travels because he was out of the country
Hmm.
for a few years in COVID, got like caught out of the country in Australia, stuck in Australia for a bit. That's a whole nother story. But there's a lot of people on that story and just in life in general that he met. And when we were going down and being like, what do you want your one person show to be about? It was the people that impact you along your journey.
Hmm.
And so we played in the room just with like simple things and just space and like viewpoints and just like getting like beautiful images and trying to connect them with games to make it very playful because our shows are audience
Hmm.
heavy. Like there's a lot of audience participation. And because of this, like I'll try and be like 20 audience members when it's just the room of us two playing around like your children in the basement. And then every time there's a beautiful image, we'll jot it down. And eventually, through just conversation and knowing what we love, because what you love, you put extra work into and you know it easy and you don't have to do as much homework because there's
Hmm.
passion. Um, and following that passion, we know we love video games. We know we love sci-fi. He loves Star Trek. I'm really into like 1960s, like original Planet of the Apes, Logan Run, like that kind of weird futuristic world. And we're like, if we mix this all with our love of cartoons and making a like with a little sprinkle of Hanna-Barbera of Jetsons, then
Hmm.
like we've created this very playful world where the frustration of having to work jobs and make things meet can go with that play of what if your job is to deliver mail across the galaxy and to look at the small things in life and just make them so exponentially huge.
Mm.
And just like every week, we just get a little closer to that and climb up that little mountain.
Hmm.
That's basically
Yeah,
how we got here.
totally. So, Melissa, then obviously, postmen don't normally go to space. So, how
Not
did
normally, they should.
so what does that add to the show? How do you think it helps the message of the show?
Ah, because it's all the people that have impacted you now in present time and in the past. And I think really heightening that with major time jumps really shows that the people in your past are there for a second and gone the next, but the impact that they've left you and like certain things that they give the postman along the way, because spoiler alert, Sevrin pops into like different characters. So like we'll
Mm.
go to prehistoric time and we'll meet a caveman, and the caveman's now got some mail and you gotta find out how he receives it. Or we go to
Yeah.
space with our letters and stuff, and it's nice to have those transformations because then when we go back to our one character we follow, like you can really see there's like this courage found and this wisdom found and this heart found
Mm.
along the way.
Totally. So, Seven, we've mentioned already that lots of the clown elements are in the show. So, how did your love of clowning begin?
I was doing a bunch. I was like always kind of gravitated towards comedy,
Hmm.
and I found out in my time doing theater and like studies that I was more of a physical actor.
Hmm.
So I was doing more and more physical comedy. And when I was in Australia, I did this mask workshop. It was like a Lecoq mask making workshop with some like actual mask play in it. And in that workshop, there was a guy who does a bunch of clown stuff. His name is Damien. He goes by the clown name of Gary Starr. And I went to his show because he was doing it around the time frame of the workshop. And I was like, oh my God, playing silly, stupid games on stage. This is what I got to do. And I asked him like about his experience with it, and he told me he had gone to Gaulier, and I looked into that, and I think I talked with another one of his friends as well, and just hearing about the school, and it just sounded like a really really cool experience. So I was like, I got to go to the place, and I went there for like the whole year. Um, and it was just like very, very changing. I went in going like, I'm an actor, I'm an actor and I do comedy. And then I like through like stuff, like just putting myself out there in that school, I left it. I was like, oh my God, I've been a clown the whole time. What was I thinking?
So, on top of the sort of the clowning, as you mentioned, you switch between characters. Does that add
Yeah.
pressure to you as a performer?
Um, I guess, but I don't know if I think of it like that. I just am like, oh, now I'll use a different physicality and I'll go play in a different way.
Mm.
For me, it's kind of like exciting. Like I get to explore and interact with people in a way that I wasn't like before. It keeps it fresh.
Mm.
Yeah.
Totally. And obviously, being the only person, the only actor on the stage, does that add pressure then? Does that make the experience different for you?
I think at first, yeah. I part of the reason why I was saying to Melissa, like, let's do a one-person show. Like our Shakespeare show was a two-person project, and that I felt really comfortable in because I had another person to bounce off of. But then being the only one on stage scared me like crazy. And I was like, okay, I think I need to mine that and explore and see why that is.
Yeah.
And then doing it a bunch, I've become more comfortable. Um, and also like I pull people up on stage. There's like some moments I can play things off of them, which is like a nice little
Mm.
moment of relief. Although actually, as I say that and I think about it more, I'm more aware. I'm like now I have to take care of someone very publicly.
Yes.
Um, so I'd say it does, but doing it, I'm comfortable. Plus, I do know that Melissa has my back at all times because she runs all the tech with a bunch of like live sounds, and there are a lot of games that we can play. And like, if I've really like, if I'm running low on time or I've gone off the rails, I know there's certain things she can hit and some cues, or like if I flop, there's some sounds she can hit that'll totally save the show.
Mm.
So having those guardrails is nice.
Yeah.
So obviously, Melissa, you mentioned that there's a lot of audience participation. So obviously, when you're writing the show, does that change the way you approach the project?
I think we know it exists. And I think we enter the room and we go, we know that this is something that through our experimentation, we latch onto, we play well with. We have audience members leaving being like, I've never wanted to participate in a show in my life, but I felt comfortable in the space to do so.
Mhm.
And with like kind of that honor and that respect when you're going into creating the next show, it's like, how do we respect that like reputation and trust we've built with past audiences and continue to build? But a lot of it is just us playing in the room together as if I'm the audience, and sometimes Sevrin will joke and he'll be like, wow, these audience members are way nicer than you. Because I'll be mean in the room. I'll be so chaotic. I'll be so mean. But because there's this sense of love and play that
Mm.
we know when we enter the room that like we can switch it on for a moment and then switch it off and be like, okay, what is this silly little moment we created? How can we then open that moment up to other people? Or is this a moment where we highlight and focus in on you? What is better in that game? But I think the most important thing when developing this show is just doing it in front of live people. Because we've had friends come in when we got our first version of the show in, and we had a lot of great friends from another show I'm a part of called Peregrinations, that's going over to Ed Fringe this summer. And we had a lot of them come in because they're just such a wise clown and physical theater trainers. So they gave us like a lot of like, audience pushback, but audience appreciation as well when we were developing it. So then we took those notes and then we got to the next stage. We did a run at the Vino Theater for a bit, and that went out really nicely because then we got to test all these games in front of new people. And sometimes like games we didn't realize were there become aware when the audience start playing back. Like there's a beautiful moment where Sevrin plays with a magnifying glass, and in the room we were exploring it with the five senses to be like, what's it like to amplify sight? What's it like to amplify hearing? What's it like to amplify noise? And then when we brought it into that like first kind of 6 previews when the show was called It Was Really Good to Know You, we had the audience one time when he goes and just grunts into it and magnifies out his voice, start grunting back. And when that new game develops, like you don't say no to a
Mm.
grunting audience. You find a way to build it in. And now like that one scene has morphed into something so beautiful that like we could have never developed single-handedly in a room by ourselves.
Mm.
But because we got it to like the beginning stages and foundations and we're open to, live feedback, I think it's now bloomed into like my favorite scene is the
Mm.
caveman scene. And I would say more, but I want you to see the show
Mhm.
and see what it's developed into.
Mm.
And yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Melissa, you talked about the growth of the show from the sort of previews to getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, you got a fairly big announcement you are heading to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yes, we
So what was it
are.
like getting that announcement and finding out your show is heading to the world's biggest theatre festival?
It's so exciting because we've had the privilege to go for the last couple of years, and just to get to go back with this
Mhm.
show at this state and have its debut, like it's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And to do it with my best friend, where I know in all the craziness of that large festival, I'm gonna have someone just like sturdy by my side and just this beautiful moment of play to like cap off every night.
Mhm.
I'm very excited to be taking it there.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, we're going to Gilded Balloon,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
we're
that'd
going to
be
be
sick.
playing there from August 7th until August. When does the
Well,
festival?
actually, we're going 5th to 31st.
5th to 31st. Yes, because we
Nice.
have previews.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's
I'm going up
previews.
this year for my first time, and I believe
What?
I'm already
That's
booked in to see your show, so I'm very excited. Um,
Ah,
but you said you went before. Was that taking a show, or was that as sort of a viewer, a visitor?
it was It was sort of like a mix of things. Like 2 years ago, we brought the Shakespeare one, but it was like a super limited run. And we also stayed like a bit before and after to like get a sense of it. And then last year we brought like a work in progress in like a small shipping container at like 10 p.m. Like just see what we can discover of this
Mm,
show.
Yeah.
mm.
A
So
nice
Severin,
little
and
work
obviously
progress.
returning, does that add pressure? Does that change how you're approaching the show?
Uh yeah, I mean I think like last year we were like I said, we were kind of like, oh, we'll figure things out and there's like a lot of room to explore. This year it's definitely like, okay, we've got this, we know how to do this show. Now it's like different things that we're a bit more worried about. And I think it's like, okay, now we want to get like press in and
Mm,
like more people to come to get our names bigger. I think it for me, it adds more pressure in terms of like our marketing strategy. Because last year we were like, we had like none of our names on the poster. Our title was a sentence, and none of our faces were on the poster. So it was like a real crapshoot. Now we're like, okay, we're fixing every one of those mistakes, and like we got to say it's us.
Yeah,
mm,
because it was a work in progress last year, and to be able to have the space at like the Hoots venue to really explore and test it out in front of a
Mm,
different audience, we learned so much about
yeah.
that show.
mm,
Not just like from a marketing standpoint, but from like structure standpoint as we've gotten into. And I think the hope is because this is a silent clown show about friendship and about all the people you encounter and having, relationships between the audience, not just with the actor, but with each other, and having like a huge dance party at the end for like just relief. I think are just beautiful things that like all developed because we want to take this internationally and share this with people who do not speak the same language as us. Because I think the language barrier is something that we've explored with our Shakespeare play, but also with this play because we want people, regardless of who you are, to when you enter the theater to be embraced by that theater, to be seen as much as you want to give that day, and to have as much comfort and vulnerability space as you need. And
mm,
I want to take that internationally with my friend, and I think
Yeah.
all the things he's describing is just that desire for us to continue to share.
mm. Fantastic. So we are coming to the end of my questions, but I do have a couple more. Where can people stay up to date with the show, and where can they stay up to date with you?
Yes. So where they can stay up to date with our show is at Time Travel Postman, TimeTravelPostman. And you can follow me as well on Instagram at Melissa Ingle. That's at Melissa period Ingle Ingle.
Fantastic, Sevrin.
Same thing, yeah. That Time Travel Postman Instagram, and then my personal one is Sevrinator, Sevrinator on
Fantastic.
Instagram. There, yeah.
I'll put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. My final question, and I'll start with Severin, is what advice do you have for young performers looking to do what you do?
Um, I would say I don't know if it necessarily like sounds so amazing for us. I'd say just do it.
Mhm.
Just like find a way and do it because I think yes, there's importance to like planning and thinking and wishing, but I think just breaking that barrier and going to do something and make something is going to make it seem a lot more attainable. And the sooner you make any mistake that you're going to make, the quicker you're going to learn and the better the things will be that you like have in mind to make.
Hmm, fantastic. And Melissa, what advice do you have for young writers looking to do what you do?
Ooh, I think it's the same thing. Just do it. Find the people that you like to do it with and just keep doing it with them because you make each other better.
Yeah, fantastic. So I said at the start, we'll end the same way. Thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. Obviously, I'm very excited to see your show in the Edinburgh Fringe. So hopefully I'll bump into you up there. I wish you the best of luck and I shall speak to you soon.